So please relax in your chair and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling and exhaling, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema. Listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we're listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. When you are ready, you may open your eyes. Oh, wow, I see a whole bunch of people have joined us when my eyes were closed. Hello, Christo, Stephanie, Joanne, Carol. It is nice to see you. Carol, what is that background you have?
That's my dad with one of our many cats.
Oh.
I don't know, Dad's just been on my mind, so that one came up and I thought, okay, cool.
Well, that's very sweet, and may his memory bless us in this meeting today. Okay, friends. Well, let's situate ourselves in our practice. Today is the second week of faith or trustworthiness. Then we'll have 2 weeks on the soul trait of order, which will complete the Tikkun Middot Curriculum. And after that, August 26th, there'll be no meeting. I will be busy taking my younger daughter off to college. And then September 2nd, I thought we would do like a special getting ready for the high holidays, maybe setting an intention, doing a little bit of an action plan. So that's where we are. So now it's time to do our check-in. So if you've been here last time, you might remember that we took an action to see, well, maybe trying to find ways to see what we could do to maybe be a little bit more reliable to the people around us. If you weren't here last week, that's fine. And you'd like to just kind of check in and say hello, that would be great as well. I have to say, like within, and I wrote this in the email for the week, within like a day of our last meeting, I had a really surprising number of things that happened, which sort of pointed to trustworthiness. My wife and I decided to take a little weekend getaway, and we got in the car to leave on a little bit of a tight timeline, and the tire light was on, and it's something that I didn't take care of, and so we had to go and spend an hour at the tire shop getting the tires replaced because there was a nail in our tire and we couldn't drive for 4 hours with that. So, and then I realized I didn't tell our friends that we were going to be out of town to reschedule our dinner for that night. And then I didn't let somebody else know about something that had happened. So in a very short period of time, I sort of felt like I was getting a little bit of a signal from the universe that this was actually something that was worth paying attention to a little bit. So that was kind of my big learning, and I've really tried to kind of focus a little bit more on household tasks and just kind of getting my tuition paid on time, and a lot of things that I sort of let go to try to work on this in this area. So that's how it showed up for me. Would anyone else like to check in or share? Yeah, Joanne. So Joanne, please unmute.
I just want to say I tried very hard to be on time for things. And including this class, which I was, it always, I turned off the radio or show early, the one that I usually like to listen to from 6:30 to 7, which was part of the problem. And the other problem is this computer is very slow. And then the third thing, as I logged in, I realized, because I went to the email to get the link, but then it asks you for the password. So I had to go on my phone to look for the password. But I think it's the same every time, so I can just write it down and have it available.
Yeah, it's the same every week.
Yeah. But this is better than I've done in the past few weeks. So, and I had one incident where I was meeting, my friends were going to pick me up at my house, but then this woman from the synagogue said, anybody want some lettuce? She had extra heads of lettuce, and I said, okay. So I figured I had time to run over there before meeting my friends, but I called. First I sent a text, and then I called and said, no, meet me on North Avenue instead of in front of my house, because I'm running, I'm running back, actually. I was running to get, because with 2 heads of lettuce, one for my friend and one for myself. And I was on time. And I got my steps in.
Okay, well, very good.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you. And doing a little bit better. That's all we ask for, really. It's, we're not going to suddenly change our habits, but making gradual progress. That's progress, and it's more likely to be lasting progress than lasting change. So well done. Yeah, Wendy.
I've learned so much. I learned so much from our last meeting, and specifically, it was from a friend of mine who's also part of this group. And I had that morning, my daughter asked me to help her, and I had said no. And then my friend said, it's nice to be able to trust people if you need them, and they say yes. And so I felt guilty, right? Pretty guilty. So then I, purposed to change that, and ended up being able to help her, and actually telling her that I want you to be able to trust me. I want you to be able to know that if you have a need, that I will be there for you, even if the timing has to be a little different. And they just moved yesterday, and I drove for half an hour today to just go and just look around and see what needed to be done. And it's just really nothing, but just like a kind of an emotional gift for her. And that felt really good. So I learned that I could be trusted, that I could change, and then a person could see that I wanted to be trusted. And the second thing was that when I first met my husband and married my husband, all in that period of time, his mom did not trust me. She did not trust that I would be good for her son, that I would do something that would disable him, that I would do things that were not good for him. And now she's gone, but I learned that you can still kind of establish some kind of a trust after that, because they all forgot their mom's yard site at the same time. There's 3 of them. One is in Europe visiting her children, and one is on the East Coast visiting her children. And we have a lot going on in our lives. So all 3 of them, usually they all email each other, and they let me in on the email. So they hadn't emailed each other. I got out the yard site candle and lit it and reminded my husband that it was his mom's yard site. I usually forget it because I usually think it's 5th for some reason. But this time I remembered, and then I was able to light that candle, sent a photo of that candle and to his sisters and said, I'm thinking about you today. I suddenly realized that though I couldn't establish that trust with her, but maybe I was in some way doing it now to show that not only had we come through this whole entire life, our 47th anniversary is the 10th, a long time of give and take together and supporting each other, so that now maybe she would trust me, right? But she didn't see all of that in the beginning. Then the third thing I learned, and I know I'm talking a lot, but this is so important to me, is that we can help others to trust others. And this is important, especially right now when there's a lot more talk about racism and things going on with how we treat others. And our places the ceilings being scraped and the places being painted, the landlord's paying for part of it. We're paying for part of it. And I found a painter. And this painter happens to be Hispanic, doesn't speak English that well. And we met this morning. And in the beginning, they kept saying, Are you sure he's going to come? All this. I said, well, I don't know why I trust him, but I do. He just seemed like a gentle soul to me. I don't know. Whatever. I think I trust people anyway. They came and they clearly did not trust him. It was very interesting. But not for him. It was probably kind of hurtful for him, actually. And they didn't want to give him a deposit. Well, I'm used to working in upstate New York where the contractors want half of what they're going to get, and we just give it to them. We know they're going to show up, right? They just want half your money. But I said, oh, well, he has to buy the paint. We should give him. To myself, I say that, and I said, well, Miguel, when you come tomorrow morning, then maybe our landlords will come, and when you will come with the paint, and then they will give you the deposit. They kind of try to, and then after that, my landlord, she's very sweet, and her husband is too. They followed him out because he left before them, and she was telling him, we really think you're a nice person. It's not you. We've been burned before, and explaining how they paid a contractor and the contractor didn't show up. So that is something to think about. But in the long run, I think that I saw some hurt in his face when they both turned to him, and it was based on racism. And I don't think that they're necessarily racist, but that's how he felt it. And so, just being able to help them see that, no, he's good, trust him, was helpful. So that's all. 3 things to trust. I noticed everything's coming in sets of 3 here today.
Yes, we've had a couple sets of 3. And thank you for sharing, Wendy. And I think your second example, you really pointed out something important, which I learned in my own brief journey this last year, which is that, our relationship with someone doesn't end when they die. And that relationship continues. And as you so beautifully demonstrated, sometimes we can bring healing to that relationship, after they're gone. And that's, that's a very powerful lesson.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Nancy.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned all that, Wendy, because it just reminded me that, like I mentioned last week, I'm kind of like the epitome of trustworthiness, but I don't trust others. And so when you said that about the painter, I'm still going through the contractors and everything, and the manager came over Monday to look and see the progress, and he wanted me to pay him the entire amount. And I'm like, you know what? The job isn't finished yet. So we went back and forth, and he goes, okay, just keep $500 in. And I'm like, he goes, we'll come back. And I'm like, okay, I know. But then we noticed that the cupboards are uneven. They're like this instead of like this. And they don't seem to want to fix it. So the stovetop still isn't delivered. It's coming tomorrow. But my trusting in others and having faith that, everything will work out because I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's putting that trust in them that they're the expert. I'm not a contractor, and just hoping that they will abide by their work ethics, that they will do the best job they can and repair the cupboards. And then there's other things. The paint is peeling from the wall, even though they just painted it. So did they use the right paint? And I don't want to distrust that they don't know what they're doing, but that little bit, comes through my mind. So I think it's very important, our topic of having trust in others and having faith. It could be a lot worse. I mean, my place is almost there. It should be done by Monday, but it's hard when you doubt. And I don't want to doubt anymore. I want to know that people really are good. They have goodness in them, and they want the best outcome for their business as well as for their client. So it's still been tough. But I did find that another insurance company I had is going to cover everything. I got confirmation today, but that was a whole thing because they said that one denied me and the other one said no, I mean, but it's like
Thank you,
the
Nancy.
perseverance of what you do in your own trustworthiness pans out, and it works out in the end.
Well, thank you. And I really resonate with what you said about this being sort of a personal challenge, and how we each sort of show up for this issue is really the key for our Mussar journey. Okay, let's hear from Linda, and then we'll start to delve into the next layer of trustworthiness.
Isn't there a saying that goes, trust God, but tie? Does that make sense to anybody?
You froze for just a minute. I don't know if it was on my end.
So trust God, but tie up your camel.
Yes, that is one of the phrases that I shared in my book, and I took that from a saying from the Islamic world: "Trust in Allah, but tie your camel."
Yeah,
And
I don't know if everybody gets that. Maybe you could just clarify a little
yeah,
bit.
it's a little bit more related to trust and faith are related to each other, and this trustworthiness is a different wrinkle, but that's sort of for trusting in God, where it's finding that balance between you sort of maintain faith that ultimately things are going to work out, but at the same time, don't expect God to keep your camel from running away. That, sometimes that we have to do our part as well. So last week, we were really focusing on kind of this trustworthiness in terms of our relationships with other people. Today, we're going to step back and look a little bit more at sort of somewhat into the faith aspects of emunah, or trustworthiness. So may I have a volunteer to unmute and read this passage? I'm very excited. I found a way to see most of you in this view.
I will if nobody else wants to. I wanted to wait a couple more moments, though.
I'll read.
Okay, go ahead.
While emunah is usually translated as faith, in this session we focus on its related meaning, trustworthiness. Emunah shares a Hebrew root with oman, an artisan. An artisan is someone who can be trusted or relied upon to produce a quality product. Emunah is that quality of reliability that we engender in others through our sustained honesty and consideration. A person or institution that acts with emunah / trustworthiness is one in which you can have faith. Rabbi David Jaffe, Tikkun Middot Curriculum.
Great, thank you, Joanne.
You're welcome.
Okay, so what is Rabbi Jaffe? And we've been talking about this a little bit, but what do you take from this kind of description of this connection between sort of faith and trustworthiness? Crystal, I've heard your voice before. Do you have any, not to put you on the spot, but I'll put you on the spot and see if you have any thoughts about this.
No thoughts yet. That's kind of the disadvantage of me missing so many sessions with this wonderful group because I just missed so much great learning. So I should definitely come in more often, but for now I'll just listen in and try to learn from y'all.
Okay, sure, no problem. What do you make of this idea of the artisan? Yeah, Frank.
I guess my understanding of an artisan, probably goes back to before the modern era, where people had skills and they were in what's the word they were journeymen, I guess. I don't know if there was any journeywoman those days, but I'm sure they were. And so that whole idea was that they knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that that's probably has to do with our intention in everyday life, that we know what we're doing. And we kind of know when we're not quite there. And so I think that's a really good example of trustworthiness. And the question is, how do we get there in most of our actions? Basically, how do we study? How do we, how are we aware of our actions? Just like an artisan has to be aware.
Yeah.
Where they get the material, how they deal with it, and how they give it to the customer.
Yes. Thank you, Frank. It reminds me of a story. When we got married, we were living in the West Coast, but we went back to the East Coast for our wedding. And for a while, we were thinking about having a Chinese banquet for just like our West Coast friends. And there was a really good restaurant that we went to, and we were talking with them, and it was much more expensive. And I kept saying, well, is there a way to do this in a less expensive way? And he finally said, I have a reputation. I can't do a Chinese wedding banquet if it's on a budget. It's really needs to be lavish. And, if you want to have a group of 6 here for a nice meal, we can do that. But if you want to make it like the big, it has to sort of meet the standards of the community. And so that was kind of his artisanal moment. Let's see, I saw Carrie, I think, and Carol. Or was it Paul?
I think this pertains. We had some trees trimmed and cut, and I was watching this guy. He was referred by a friend, and I trust my friend, and so I also trusted this guy, and he really knew what he was doing, and he did it in such a way that I felt he was an artist with the trees. And I told him when he was done, I said, this is really beautiful. I said, you're an artist with these trees. And he said, no, I'm just a technician. So I thought that was interesting. I still think he was an artist, but he didn't.
Well, maybe artisan is kind of the hybrid of the technician and the artist.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was doing something that you found very special. So thank you, Carrie. Carol.
An artisan is a creator. An artisan produces something, even if it's not something you can hold in your hand, like trimming a tree or whatever. And a true artisan will take pride in doing the best possible job. I've learned to bake bread over the last year, sourdough bread, and I post pictures of my bread to a couple of bread pages. I take great pride when it comes out well, and when it doesn't come out real well, I take pride in the fact I've learned something from it. So I think an artisan is somebody who is not only who's trustworthy, because whatever the artisan creates is something the artisan should be proud of. And it's like that Chinese restaurant. I have a reputation. I'm not going to do a shoddy job just to cut corners to save a few bucks. I think that's, and not that everybody should walk around and be, oh, I'm so proud of everything, but have enough pride in yourself and enough pride in what you do to do the best job you can. And when people know that you will, that engenders a great deal of trust.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, great points there. Pride in oneself. And this one really, this is a new soul trait for me, looking at it in this way. And it's, again, I can sort of see like, okay, I just want to get this paper done for school with the minimum amount of work, but does my reputation matter? Do I want to hand in, B-level work or C-level work, and that's a couple of times I've been like, I could stop now, but there's some obvious holes in this paper. And so it's a trade-off, but I do think it's important to do a good job on stuff. Wendy, did I see your hand?
Yes, I was thinking, I'd like to look at, I would like to look at the trustworthiness in the modern era too, because I'm thinking of the times, well, right now I'm helping my son and his bride-to-be prepare their wedding, and she's converting, which of course, what mother doesn't love that? And she wants a Jewish wedding. She will be by then. And so in looking for the chuppah and chuppah cover, all these things I haven't had to do. I have boys, right? And it's so great to go on Etsy or one of those other sites and have all those reviews of people saying, this is an artisan. They work with sustained honesty. They work with consideration, care, concern, and pride. I mean, those are the things that then it helps me then trust in them. And that's what I was thinking about when Frank was saying, yes, in the old era and the modern era, now we have like a way to get that kind of information. But in the journeyman era, you would watch the person, making the boat and seeing how he was doing, and you would know that was an artisan. So it's kind of interesting to think of how trustworthiness helps us in our lives, and it helps us to establish, helps us to have faith, really.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. Well, that's a good segue to our next point here. So this is from the Mussar Torah commentary, and it's from the Torah portion where it's talking about Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dreams. And Joseph's in prison, and he goes and he interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and Pharaoh really trusts him with his interpretation. So, so may I have a volunteer to read this first bullet, please?
Sure, I'll read.
Well, I saw Randy raise his hand, Carol. Since you spoke before, do you mind if we have Randy read?
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
I thought nobody else stepped.
Throughout the narrative, we read that God is with Joseph, and Joseph professes his faith in God at his darkest times and in his successes. Joseph's specific details make him believable to Pharaoh. Because of his faith, Pharaoh trusts him and decides to elevate him to be the chief architect and administrator of all Egypt.
Great, thank you. And I think what she was referring to here, like with the specific details, is two things that she wrote that I didn't copy down. One was that, he had sort of very detailed interpretations of the dream. And also all along the way, he's like, I'm not the one interpreting this dream. God, God, this is God's doing. I'm just, the conduit. So what impact does that have, according to Rabbi Grant, on Pharaoh? I think that's what the second bullet speaks to. So maybe, Randy, do you want to read the second one for us as well, please?
Rabbi David Jaffe draws a direct link between the midah of faith in God and an individual's trustworthiness when he describes emunah as that quality of reliability that we engender in others through our sustained honesty and consideration.
As we saw in the last slide. Continue.
Joseph becomes trustworthy as an interpreter and as viceroy of Egypt because he has put his trust in God. Thus, he indeed merits Pharaoh's claim that he is endowed with Ruach Elohim, the Spirit of God.
All right, thank you. All right, so this is a bit of a jump. We don't always talk about faith in God. American Mussar is a little bit God optional, but I wanted to sort of challenge us all and to see, what do you make of this point? Is it really true that someone who professes their faith in God is more trustworthy to you?
It hasn't always been in my personal experience. Like if somebody tells me something, I try to take the advice of, oh gosh, thankfully you're the one in rabbinical school, not me, Mr. Greg. It's either Mishnah or Talmud that says, give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's like they're paraphrasing, assume nothing, question everything. I try to assume only the best, but kind of like still brace myself in case their actions may show otherwise. And I emphasize goodness forbid, obviously, just in case.
Yeah.
That's where I usually try to leave most things. Maybe it's my ADHD that kind of gets in the way sometimes, but I'm always like overly nervous or overly concerned that I might overstep a boundary and not realize it. And so I'm constantly worried. I tell people, if I'm out of bounds, please tell me so that I'll know. Because I want to apologize and not do it again or do it to someone else.
Yeah.
Just me being overly cautious with, because I don't always recognize people's boundaries from time to time with, as you might recall from a phone call we chatted on a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I remember that phone call well. So it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is there's sort of two things. It's like, yeah, you sort of listen to what they say, but you also kind of look at their actions. And I think in this passage, it also talks about Pharaoh doing two things, like what, Joseph's faith in God and his specific plan. So it wasn't just like, I believe in God, I have a lot of faith in God, you can trust me. It was sort of combined with something else.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? Yeah, Carol.
Sort of a question. Am I off? Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that Joseph professes his belief in God, his faith in God, and I'm not saying you have to have faith in God as put forth in the scriptures, but to recognize that there's something bigger working here than me. There's an element of humility there as well. And I think when you have some humility and you don't act like you know everything and you're everything, people are more likely to trust you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Carol. It reminds me, I've been watching a lot of Olympics. I don't know, are other people watching Olympics? Some, viewership's down this year, I hear. But, I do watch the interviews with the athletes and they're like, oh, you won a gold medal, how was it? And the ones who come across best to me are like, oh, I owe so much to my coaches and to my family. And even like someone won a gold medal in swimming, they're still praising the other swimming teammates who supported them and cheered for them and worked with them. And they're like, yeah, and there was a certain level of faith that comes out too. It's like, I never gave up during the hard times. I kept going, and having all those people around on the journey really, really helps. Paul.
Unmute.
So I think something interesting came up with Simone Biles and how she pulled back from her competitions. And that's a different level of trustworthiness there, I think.
Mhm.
It's somebody who trusts themselves and trusts their teammates and expresses themselves that they know that it would not be in anybody's best interest, because she had the twisties, she called them, that if she tried to push through, she could damage her own body, she could damage her team's chances of winning. And so she thought it best if she just back off and let others take her place in the teams and just not to compete. And I know there were a lot of people that thought that she was just giving up, but I've been in situations, I played in sports when I was in high school, and I recognized that there were times when I felt like I had to follow my own lead, when I thought, if I do this again, I'm really going to hurt myself. And my coaches were never supportive of that, but I just felt like I have to really follow what I'm doing. So for me, it really resonated that there was a sense of real genuineness that really rang true, and that she was listening not just to herself, but to she was fully aware of what was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great comparison, Paul, and very, very relevant to our topic. Thank you. Other thoughts? Yeah, Wendy. We'll hear from Wendy, and then we'll start to lead into our breakout groups.
Well, there's something comforting in depending on somebody who knows that he or she can't go it alone, because you know that somehow they've got this support behind them. And I sort of think that's where Carol was going when she was talking about God. But I was thinking just something simple like hanging a picture. Do you want to hang it on a nail, or do you want to hang it on a picture hanger? You want that extra support. Like when you're getting a loan, the bank wants to know what's behind you. So Pharaoh could see that God was behind Joseph. So just in case, Joseph knew, he just knew. So he did have faith. It also goes beyond that, because he was giving credit to God, but not for doing the actual thing. He wasn't giving credit for God interpreting the dream. It really was Joseph interpreting it, but it was because of what God gave to Joseph. In other words, his upstairs brain. And, just that's what I think.
Yeah, thank you. I love that idea of kind of having the backing, that firm backing. And that is, as I prophesized a moment ago, a great lead in to our next topic. So I'm going to talk through this section and kind of explain the context, and then these same texts we're going to use for our breakout groups. So there's a quote in Numbers that's saying Moses is being trusted, ne iman. And the Rashbam, who I think was a grandson of Rashi, he said that it means kind of being rooted in every moment of the day. And he quotes Isaiah, "I will affix him as a peg in a secure place, bimakom ne'iman. The peg stuck in the strong ground will not easily fall." So David Jaffe kind of riffs on this idea a little bit, and kind of that sort of strong peg. And he explains that, your peg, the dirt can't be too hard, because otherwise you're not going to be able to get your tent peg in. And as someone who's camped a lot, I know exactly what that kind of dirt is like. And you're getting your hammer and the thing is bending, and it's just a big mess. Or you can have like dirt which is so loose that you can push it in, but it just comes right out. And you don't get that level of security. So for our breakout groups, and I'll copy this in, I want you to kind of think about yourself and your own life, because we've talked about sort of evaluating whether we can trust other people, but I think at the end of the day, it's how can we, again, bolster our own trustworthiness to others. So what do you think about this image of the peg? Do you think you're sort of the too solid peg that sort of impenetrable? Are you the peg that just is so loose and moves this way and that it can't hold the peg? So I'm going to copy these into the chat, and I'm curious to see. I'll stop the share and I'll open the breakout rooms. Okay, let's see. Let me just move people around a little bit. Okay. Just so I didn't want to have like the two couples in the room together. That would have been too many people to talk. Okay, so you should see a join breakout room message on your screen. So for those of you on the custom streaming service, thank you so much for watching. If you are watching, please like this video so other people will be inclined to check it out as well. Also, please come by AmericanMussar.com. You may sign up for our mailing list. And sign up for the mailing list and you can get our bi-weekly emails which introduce every topic. So have a wonderful week. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I was sort of pondering the question myself, where do I sort of fall on that spectrum? And I think for me, I probably a little bit more on the rigid side. And I was thinking if you're like really hard ground or if you're really like sandy ground, both of them are kind of untrustworthy, because if it's always no, or if you're always saying yes, you say yes more than you can deliver, then in both cases you're not so trustworthy. But that was kind of how I thought about it. I'd love to hear kind of how you thought about it, or I'm probably a little more on the rigid side. I think that's probably where I need to do my work a little bit. So how about other people? How was your conversation? What came up? Yeah, Linda and Frank.
I don't remember if I said this to the group or just to Frank and Crystal, but a friend taught me this saying, when I'm asked to do something and I'm not sure, I say a definite maybe.
Also, I mentioned that the idea came to me just now, that there's a practice that I don't practice as good as I could or really do, is Bili Neder. And for many communities, that's part of the, or should be, I mean, or maybe, I'm not sure if it actually is, but the idea is that without a promise, the idea is that any commitments we make, we say without a promise, which is like a definite maybe or whatever. So anyways, it's a way to be aware of our commitments.
Yeah, thank you. It's an interesting construction. I'm percolating on that one a little bit. Who else has some thoughts? Yeah, Joanne.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about how I'm trying harder to listen and not just, I don't know, have a power position because I'm the head of something. On the one hand, to my sisterhood board, and on the other hand, I got a question today. I was asked something, and I just said no, because this has happened before, and we said, actually, the person who's most knowledgeable said it's not a good idea. So I feel like, okay, good. So I can be strong against the board, and they're all there, Michigas, and more flexible when it's appropriate.
Yeah, there's something very
That's learning.
powerful about giving a definite
learning.
no. You know, I did a lot of, you know, when I was promoting my book more, I did a lot of kind of writing to people and pitching podcasts. And, you know, part of what my training was is like, you keep asking until you get a definite yes or no. You know, it's like, someone's like, well, maybe, and this and that, you know, it's like, that's totally unhelpful to me. Maybe, you know, I need to know in some cases, is it a yes or no? And in some cases, it really makes, it's also like setting a boundary, which is, like I can relate to what Linda and Frank said, where sometimes it's like, I'm not sure if I can do this or not, you know, I'll think about it. So there's a place for each. Other thoughts? Yeah, Wendy.
Well, we asked one another, where does the loose ground come from? Where does the solid ground come from? What makes you loose ground? What makes you solid ground? So we came up with, if we didn't feel, if we had like low self-esteem about something, then that caused a low loose ground. That was like loose ground. And then if we were overly confident, that would be too solid ground. There was something in between, and then we came up with understanding, and helping fix the problems that come up with too loose ground, too solid ground, and how the tent, you know, it's not going to go up with loose ground and not going to come down with solid ground. So I thought that, you know, my partner came up with the fact that understanding is the way, you know, is the way to help solve that problem.
Yeah, understanding. Someone earlier said listening. I can't remember who it was, but you know, back to the Joseph story. Joseph listened to Pharaoh's dream. You know, it doesn't say, and Joseph kept interrupting Pharaoh and giving interpretations and guessing where Pharaoh was going with the story. Joseph listened, and then Joseph, you know, spoke after listening. And so understanding, seeking to understand the other person, listening, these are really important skills for sure. Important. Other thoughts? Yeah, Randy.
Well, I had a good talk with Harry, but I had a thought, and it's like we're talking about the ground, but I started at the very beginning. I had a couple things happen last week, and what I'm thinking about is the space, in making space for that thing that could make things better. We often think about with being trustworthiness, something we do, and I had an odd thing happen to me during the week. I had anyway, let's say an insurance claim, and I'm talking with the person. It's been frustrating and whatever, and it's right at the moment, and they say, oh, and I just added this up again, and it was made, a mistake was made, and we're only going to give you this much. And that I didn't say that. What I actually said is, oh, well, you're a very good employee, and that's really a good job that you did. I used to work in accounting a little bit and for a while, and I do appreciate somebody that pays attention. And I gave a little space, and then I said, but then I would get, you know, you've had this amount there for a couple months, and I would get $300 less. And I didn't say anything else. And he was quiet a little bit, and he said, well, I have this other thing that, and I'm going to give you this other money, and it's going to be more, you know, and he didn't say why. And I still a little bit in shock because I had two things like that this week, where one where I had a little fuss with my daughter and I allowed a space. You know, it's like, well, I really would like it if we could work this out, and it happened. And it's like, I don't quite know. It's not quite what we're saying, but I'm quite in shock, and I felt like I should share, because it's like it's like when the light bulb goes on or something. It's like, well, life doesn't normally go this way, and I like this a lot. I'd like to continue it.
Yeah, well, it feels, thank you for sharing that, Randy. It feels very related to me, because you were creating a space and putting that trust in the other person that they were going to do their part. You know, you sort of created the space and you trusted that they would step into it. And there's a whole lot of Hasidic and Kabbalistic teachings about God filling the space between two people. So creating a space, you know, that can let the divine in a little bit and allow real relationship to form. And that's beautiful. Thank you. All right, well, would anyone else, any other comments before we do our closing meditation? Okay, well, let's all once again get comfortable and taking a deep breath through the nose and exhale again through the mouth. Let's just visualize that solid stake in the ground, that solid peg, firmly rooted, not so rigid that it can't ever move, but not so soft that it'll move from the smallest touch. And if we think of ourselves as that peg, what if we think of the divine as the ground, giving us support, helping us to be upright, helping us to be flexible, helping us to take pride in what we do and what we create, helping us not to be so prideful that we become arrogant. Helping us to listen, helping us to create space, helping us to speak honestly and respectfully, not to overcommit, but not to be dismissive. A moment of gratitude for the support that we receive from one another in this community, when we're here and when we're not here. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, thank you so much for being here. Wishing you a good weekend and a good week. I will look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.